Hello, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we're going to do a watercolor landscape painting, and this is going to follow kind of series that I started yesterday, where I'm looking at a painting from a master and doing a fast and loose sketch of it. I'll introduce the tools, and then I will talk about the experiment. So I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge Aqua. I saturated it with water, and it's starting to buckle already, so I need to flatten that out. It's 100% cotton, and it's a 140-pound cold press. I'm going to be using the medium hake brush and probably the quill. I've been playing around with those too. I'm looking at a painting by Anthony Vandyke Copley Fielding, which I had looked at his work yesterday and did a sketch of it. The goal, there's kind of quite a few goals with this experiment in this series. I'm going to be playing around, kind of just hopefully learning from the masters by sketching them, and trying to take a fast and loose approach to the painting styles that I love from the 1800s. So I'll kind of jump into it. This one has a lot more texture in it than yesterday's did. It's the same painter. I'm going to look around and explore and see what other options, what other painters from that time period I can try to sketch with. But it was interesting seeing the sky difference in this one. I'm playing around with raw sienna. In the previous, there was just very nice smooth gradation, and this one almost feels like it's gouache or oils, or kind of like a sky from Sargent. So there's that. It's definitely different than yesterday's. Now, I'm going to use ultramarine blue with the raw sienna to make my gray. And one of the things that I had started the experiment with yesterday was saying that I didn't want to quite get the colors matching, or a perfect painting. It's a sketch, but seeing what type of subtleties and tonal values and compositional shapes I can learn and explore from them. I have a mountain right here. Then we have the landmass, background, and our water will be in here. Grab some more raw sienna. One thing that hit me yesterday was that, and I've kind of commented on this before, I really don't like painting backgrounds after I started putting mid-ground trees in or foreground trees in, where I kind of put the sky in and then let it sit there. But I felt that I had to go back yesterday, so I'm going to see if I can expound upon the background more in the wet and wet stage. I was also thinking color-wise, I'm going to grab Prussian blue. I need to start reading my old books again, see what pigments were available. and what people were using. Let's see if I can get any hints on approaches. And also just have better terminology for the art movements. Because I always refer to the landscape paintings of the 1800s, the early 1800s, as tonalist, Hudson River Valley, but that's kind of the American name for the movement. I think picturesque was the name for the movement worldwide. Grab some burnt sienna, kind of mellow out this green. I think today I have to place an order for more paper. I have to check my pigments, see if I need more tubes. If you want to support this channel, I have a whole bunch of links down below, and I have the Patreon. Okay, here's that green feel. And usually on the channel, I'm kind of experimenting with different palettes, maybe different tools, compositional ideas. I feel like I'll hopefully be on this kick of studying masters. I'm going to grab a little bit of burnt umber for at least a month. I don't know if I said today is May 1st. We start state testing tomorrow. Right now I'm just getting everything out in proportion. So we start state testing tomorrow, and the school year ends before the end of May. So there's not too much prep work or anything I need to do work-wise, since a lot of education has just turned into testing in the last month. Using the paper towel. This is a shop rag. That's Percy in the other room. I'm letting the cats in the art room. Percy, you could come in here. She might just not know where I am. So the shop rag. Yeah, I'm in here. Yeah, what's up? You good? Sorry, I think I started talking about the shop rags 2 or 3 times and got distracted. So the shop rag just seems to hold up really well. I get them in the automotive section of the stores. And I think I need to actually buy some more. I used this one to wipe the palette off before I got started. And half of it is already soaked because of that. Lifting out highlights. One thing I learned from yesterday's was that my approach to the gradation gave it a misty look, like where the light source was coming from, and the actual painting, and I was following Mr. Anthony Vandyke. The painting had more of a sunrise effect. So I think the color and the gradation affected the feel for the time of day and what was taking place. in here, it really looks like whitewash was used in this region. So I might actually place some out and play around with that. But there is this grayness in the sky where it's darker tonal value. So I'm grabbing some ultramarine and mixing that with either burnt umber or raw sienna. Both of those kind of give a dark gray. In James Fletcher Watson's books, he uses that for a stormy sky, ultramarine and burnt umber. I know I've talked in the past about doing little videos on art books, but I think I'm stretching myself too thin with different experiments. I'm grabbing the quill to kind of help pull this guy up. Get a smoother transition. I'm not sure if other watercolorists used this approach. It's not something I use often, but I think that the Chinese brush painters would do that. Have one brush in one hand, one brush in the other. One to kind of lay it out, one to spread it out. Just building up those darks. When we do our dry off, with all this ultramarine, we are going to have quite a bit of granulation in the sky. I think it'll be fine. There's that yellow glow. I'm thinking that maybe kind of a negative painting around it, where we put the raw sienna in. I'll help the yellow glow pop. More ultramarine. So I'd like to start reading the art books again and being able to give a little bit more of the history. All I know that this gentleman is a British painter from the late 17 to early 1800s, and I think I did see who they mentioned that he was taught by. I think maybe a Varley, but I'm not really knowledgeable of my painters. Okay, let's move to a different spot. This background mountain and the short little blurb that I recall reading, I talked about his landscapes and then how his seascapes are, I think, a little bit more dramatic and I think scary, for lack of a better term, was the way they were describing his works. Maybe just a lot more stormy. With these guys, I'm using the paper towel to shape the mountains, because he has very specific edges on a lot of these peaks. Now, ultramarine, raw sienna. the Hudson River Valley movement, and I'm just going to use the term picturesque to describe this movement until I know better. There was just like so much detail everywhere, and it was as if you had like a photograph, a clear lens of everything in focus. And then the second half of the 1800s, the tonalists and others started fighting against that. So I just have that approach, the fast and loose, where it's kind of get the idea of it. And your Stuart Davies, oil painter, great is getting the feel and the illusion of trees and branches. I think maybe I can describe my experiment by looking at the picky painters and seeing how I can distill it. Kind of like Ranson and other painters who would take a photograph and pick and choose, or a scene, pick and choose what they want in it or not. We have these dark backgrounds here. As you can tell, it's still very wet and wet. I'm just pushing a lot around. My inclusion teacher, Rossiana here, I was out longboarding the other day, and she has a friend kind of staying long term with her. Well, the friend figures out like the next stage in life, and the friend's an artist. The friend's just trying to figure out if she wants to stay in Louisiana and other stuff. I had saw my friend and went in to get some water because I was exhausted and thirsty, and her friend had set up a kind of little studio in the dining room. And the friend was doing, I think, a watercolor house portrait. And it was in process. The friend wasn't there. I haven't met this person yet. This is background darkness. And it was interesting, her approach, she doing the house portraits, and you could see things drawn out, and areas painted in, and some areas completely omitted, kind of like blocking out and then working one spot at a time. So it's really cool seeing someone else's approach in that regard. What I need to do is talk to my friend, just say, hey, I want to come over and I want to pick your friend's brain on her approach to watercolors. It's great talking to other people and watching different painters and discussing different ideas. It could be a little overwhelming though. For example, I know people that watch my channel don't just watch me, they probably watch Stephen Cronin and David Usher and Lois Davidson and Joe Menza, Alan Owen. There's a whole bunch of people out there, you know, painting. But it can get overwhelming. You can get a little bogged down developing your own approach and your own style with watching so many different people. And if you ever feel like you're struggling in that regard, I would not be offended if you took a break from watching me so you could spend more time on Rick S. or anybody else painting. But that's just kind of my thoughts, and some other artists have expressed that as well, where if you're feeling bogged down, take that into consideration. And these videos in this line of experiments are definitely going to be me learning in real time, carrying stuff over from a previous painting of what I've learned. I like the Prussian blue, adding that to this type of palette. I think that, let's get that feel, the ridges. It seems like a lot of Hudson River Valley and picturesque, these large scenes, have ridges in the foreground or in the landscape to kind of prevent a monotonous plane from taking place. There's often a lot of details in the foreground, and one of like the rules that you kind of always hear or read is don't put a lot of details in the foreground because you don't want to get bogged down in it. But what I think is that they did have a lot of detail in the foreground, but were very tonally close together, where the detail was maybe very small. So you didn't get bogged down. I keep on using that word, and hopefully you understand what I mean by that. But if we had a lot of things going on, but very close tonally, it's not going to be overwhelming. Kind of just mixing it dark. I should put out some Payne's Gray, because I mean, black had to have been on their palettes. I have that in a Kraken black. I don't think I'm going to use it on this one, but I know he had developed that one with Daniel Smith brand to mimic the blacks of the 17th century Danish, I think. I'm just grabbing this tool. This was somebody in the previous comments had asked for me to talk a little bit more about the tools that I use. These are handmade tools that were made for me by a YouTuber. I call him Mr. Mega, but I believe the pronunciation is Megzamami. And I hadn't heard from him recently, like, you know, just in the past few days, but he did comment on the painting that I uploaded today. So I want to hit him up. And we've talked about doing a raffle or a giveaway for these handmade tools that he's made. I don't think he has any interest in really selling them, but I think he would love for people to use them. So let me know. I know I keep on saying to him, you know, kind of let me feel people out and what people are looking for. But I think I should just say, you know what? If you want, send me a bunch, and then either I'll get some envelopes or vice versa, and just start mailing them out to people. So I really need to message him. Okay, so in my previous painting, so yesterday's experiment, I find that a lot of these art movements in this time period had this motif of the lone tree or a group of trees, kind of a cluster, in the midground. I struggle with trees in that location because I start building them larger than they should be, and they start taking over the scene, and it starts messing with the proportion and their location. I had went wet and wet yesterday to map out the tree trunks and the branches, but it started spreading, and I saw that that was kind of one of the things that caused me to start making things look bigger than they're supposed to be. So what I had done was used the flat edge of the tool to kind of scrape sideways to mark them out, and also to start getting the effects of, I guess it's a birch type tree. So that's something that I've learned about myself, and something that will probably be carried over into my tonalist paintings as I learn these things. I'm using this whole flat edge to see what type of illusion of texture we can get. It's going to push the pigment and pool it in different spots. Unfortunately, we are going to have a huge drying shift take place. Burnt umber and ultramarine, just putting in that dark in there. Grabbing that same dark, putting a little bit in that background, a little bit closer trees. Grab a brownish wash. I know I didn't clean up or dry off anything yet, but let's start getting this in. We didn't use any light red oxide. Usually I'm always using light red oxide in backgrounds. So I'll grab a little bit of ultramarine and light red oxide. And like I had commented on before, he had very sharp edges. And I think that went into the rambling about the Hudson River Valley movement, and then the tonalist movement, the differences. We could come back over all this. And the cows. Everybody had cows in these paintings. Let's do a dry off, and wow, we're 30 minutes in. You know what? I think I will stop this video after I do the dry off so you guys can see how it looks, and do a two-parter. Okay, so let me pause this real quick. All right, so here it is after the dry off. So this will be our wet and wet stage. You can see how things lightened up some. We have the composition, everything laid out in place. So I'm going to stop the video and I'll do a part 2. I'll have that linked down below. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, follow. Let me know what you think, and I will talk to you all soon.